Hey everybody, we're here at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook. He's Jason, I'm Chucky, for the sports betting podcast Bookends, powered by STN Sports. And I think you can hear it in my voice and see the smiles on our face. Yay, sportsbooks! It's Super Bowl week, so we're pumped up, we're excited. This is kind of the calm before the storm. It's not quite the eye of the storm yet, but the winds are starting to pick up a little bit. We can see that it's getting busier. We've taken some mid-5-figure bets, a 6-figure bet so far, and the action's going to be fun. I mean, you got to have an STN Sports app, because every prop is on the app, but just the atmosphere, the sounds that echo from a sports book are contagious throughout the casino. And if you couldn't be at the game, I want to be right here, one of our racing sports books, with 400 or 500 of your closest friends, rooting either with or against them. But it's just an unbelievable experience, Jay. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and it's been a busy week for us, the bookmakers, in coming up with this 30 pages of prop sheets. So a lot of work for the team this week in getting all the props up, whether it's the yardage props, the touchdown props, some of the more unique props. But it made it a little bit easier because we were so familiar with these two teams from just two years ago. So a lot of being able to look at what they did 2 years ago with the side and the total being somewhat similar made it a little bit easier. And that was we were able to stretch the props out to get the 30 pages. We were at 26 pages last year, so we're up to 30 pages. Lots of different options and different ways to be able to bet the game.
I think what makes it fun, too, is you're right. It's the rematch. These two teams played 2 years ago. In that game, Jalen Hurts, 3 rushing touchdowns. Had the Eagles have won that game, he would have clearly been the MVP. But this year's Eagle team, just a little bit different, because they have a certain running back in the backfield, Saquon Barkley, now, that's been unbelievable during the regular season and the postseason. And it kind of adds an interesting dynamic to the Eagles right now, because if you're within the 5, you have to figure, in that 2 to 3 range, it's definitely Hurts in the tush push. But outside the 5, can Barkley be that guy to get a couple of rushing touchdowns and kind of balance things a little bit?
Well, he definitely has been. Obviously, he's had a historical season, absolutely incredible run that he's had this year.
Sorry, Giants fans.
Moving from the Giants to the Eagles and having the big year. But again, he's also been a big play, Saquon Barkley, as we've gone to these big playoffs. He's had the big runs against the Rams. He had the 2 big runs. He had the big run on the opening play against the Commanders. Right. And they've been early, a team that normally, when we went through the regular season and looked at their games, the Eagles were not a quick start team. They kind of lulled into the game and were a dominant second half team. But the playoffs, it's been a different Eagles team, as they've been quick scorers, and Barkley's been a big part of that with the big long runs early in the game.
Well, you think about this Eagle team, and I mean, what's their path to win it? And I mean, they're talented. We know they have probably the better defense, not by a lot, but they have the better defense. They've got the bigger offensive line. They have the better rushing attack with Saquon Barkley. Then you look at the Chiefs, what's the path for victory? And it's number 15 and Andy Reid. I mean, they're unbelievable, right? I mean, you give them 2 weeks to prepare. Everybody knows what Andy Reid's record is coming off a bye. In the postseason, they're 17-3 with Patrick Mahomes. They've won 9 straight postseason games. They don't do it pretty. They do whatever they have to do to win the game. So I think when you look on paper and you're like, God, this Eagle team is stacked. They're loaded. They just might be the better team. They were the favorite last time they played. Now they're getting points, although I could see this game going to pick, or maybe Philadelphia won. But it's that intangible of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, what you have to kind of think about in this game.
Well, I'll start with my script on what the Eagles need to do to win the game first. And I think that it starts with the turnovers. When we look at what they've done here in the playoffs, they were able to turn the Packers over 4 times. And coincidentally, the Packers fumbled the opening kickoff, again, leading to a quick start for the Eagles. But Packers turned the football over 4 times in the game against the Rams. The Rams had 2 fumbles. And then in the NFC Championship, we saw the Commanders turn the ball over 4 times with 4 fumbles and an interception. So if you're counting, that's 10 turnovers for the Eagles' opponents, and the Eagles have not turned the ball over. They've been able to put up a donut in the playoffs. So to continue this path of success and winning, for me, it means the Eagles have to continue to find a way to turn the Kansas City Chiefs over, and Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, they've got to hold on to that football. No turnovers for the Eagles is a path to success. The other thing that sits in a path to success for me is controlling the clock. You talked about Patrick Mahomes and the wizardry of Patrick Mahomes. And the one way to keep Patrick Mahomes from beating you is to keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. And so if I can run the ball with Jalen Hurts, if I can run the ball with Saquon Barkley, if I can keep the short passing game going, not run out of bounds, limit those possessions, maybe limit the Kansas City Chiefs to 8, 9, 10 drives in this big championship game, that's a path to success for the Philadelphia Eagles. I do think that they're going to want to feed the ball to Barkley and Hurts, and we're going to see the run. But if that doesn't work, we do know that this Kansas City Chiefs team, I think they were the number 8th ranked rushing defense in the league, and they're not going to let Hurts and Barkley beat them. I do think that there is a path to seeing Devonta Smith or A.J. Brown have a big game because those Kansas City Chiefs are going to have to suck up to that line, want to stop Hurts and Barkley, and if that leaves one-on-one for Smith or Brown, I think the Eagles will take a couple of those shots. So I do look for a chance for either one of those two receivers, and I don't think it's necessarily number one receiver in Brown or number one receiver in Devonta Smith. I think it's whoever gets that single coverage. The Eagles will take a couple shots downfield with those guys.
The Chiefs haven't done a great job in the postseason of covering the tight end. So maybe that opens things up for Goddard a bit.
Both teams haven't done a particularly good job of tightening tight end. I'm gonna hold off on my Eagles when we talk about some of the props and stuff like that. But the tight end position for both teams is going to be a key position in this game. Again, from a controlling the clock standpoint, not tight ends stretching the ball downfield, but how do I convert on those 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 5s by going to those tight ends and continuing that clock moving. And of course, we all know the other thing that the Eagles have to do successfully is the push-tush. So when they get to that 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 4th and 1, we know the 4th down is coming, that they're going to have the 4th and 1, and can the Kansas City Chiefs and Chris Jones get in there and find a way, much like they did in a controversy against the Bills, be able to stop that 4th and 1, that key 4th and 1, and we're going to see it a couple times during the game. Can the Kansas Chiefs find a way to stop the push-tush?
Well, that was the key. I was going to say that, is that Buffalo couldn't get that yard when they needed it. With the tush-push, the Eagles should be able to get that yard when they need it. I think you look at Philly's defense, fewest points allowed, second fewest yards allowed. Although we look at these two teams and you would say, hey, there's going to be a lot of scoring. They played 2 years ago. It was 38-35. We know that from a prop perspective, the betting public loves the over. Ticket count last week was 84% in favor of the over. It's now dropped down to 81%. I still think you're going to see that ticket count tick up a bit. We've taken 3 mid 5-figure wagers on the under, a 6-figure wager on the over right now. But my guess is we're going to be huge under fans by the time this game kicks off. It's so many props and so many things tied to the offensive guys in this, yet we continue to look at their defenses and say, Spags and Fangio, what are they going to dial up to prevent this from being that 38-35 game, and could you see a much low-scoring game between these two teams?
Before I jump into the total, I just want to go back to what I believe the path for victory for the Chiefs. And obviously, number one, it starts with the turnover game again. We talked about the Eagles getting 10 turnovers and committing 0 turnovers in the playoffs. The Chiefs actually have committed 1 turnover. They turned the ball over against the Texans, but they've not been able to do it on the defensive side, as neither the Bills or Texans turned the ball over. So again, I think a key path to victory for them is getting the Eagles to be able to turn the football over and getting kind of a jump start with a quick turnover in the game from that standpoint. But the other thing is, you talked about the wizardry of Patrick Mahomes and who can he make a shining superstar in this game? When we talk about the players for the Kansas City Chiefs, and obviously we always talk about Travis Kelce being at the top of that list of him making big plays and being the superstar, but we talk about Kareem Hunt, Hopkins, Juju Smith-Schuster, Hollywood Brown. He's got a lot of veterans that have a lot of low totals on their over-under yardage and low receptions, but can one of those guys step up and be a winning presence in a big game, especially when we talk about the Philadelphia Eagles and how young they are, with Cooper DeJean, the nickelback from Iowa, in his rookie year. Quinton Mitchell is a rookie out of Toledo. That's a cornerback. Can these veteran wide receivers find a way to exploit this young secondary for the Eagles? And I think that's a big path to victory, in that they can, again, hold the ball, keep Barkley and Hurts off the field with short passing routes to these veteran receivers.
I think you have to throw into Xavier Worthy, who could he maybe make that big play and swiftly get behind that young swiftly get behind that young defense in the secondary and maybe make a big play there. I think that's going to be an interesting part as well. I mean, you look at this Eagles
and defense. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't want to disregard
right.
the Kansas City Chiefs are going to have to play some fantastic run defense. They're going to have to find a way to put guys in the box, stop Barkley. They're going to have to stop Hurts, and we talked about it on the Eagles side. The key, one or two times, can the Kansas City Chiefs stop the push tush?
Well, you look at Spags, the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs, and he's been there and what he's done in Super Bowls. And you look at the Eagles, since their bye week, 15-1. I mean, they've been on fire so far. So it's really an interesting dynamic when you look at these two teams. And I know we talked about it with John a little bit off air. It's like when you look at the Eagles, you're like, God, that running attack, that number one ranked defense, their big offensive line, the success Hurts had against this team, and how dominant they've been in the turnover category. They're the better team on paper, but it's that intangible again of Mahomes, Andy Reid, and Kelsey in a Super Bowl and an opportunity to win 3 in a row.
Yeah, Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl for the 5th time in the last 6 years, won 2 straight, and it's that, do you really want to step in front of Patrick Mahomes when he consistently finds ways to win these games?
I know we've kind of talked about the game a little bit and kind of broken down some stuff, and you referenced the prop packet. Well, just for, quickly want to touch on it. For you guys that maybe are prop packet, what's that? It's an abbreviation for propositions, and propositions on the Super Bowl have become arguably the biggest part of what goes on Super Bowl Sunday. A proposition is really the game within the game. You might not love the Eagles or the Chiefs or maybe the over or under, but there are 1,000, 1,500 different ways to bet the Super Bowl when you look at this packet. From the coin toss to will the final play be a kneel? Who could potentially be the MVP? Some really cool, interesting props that are tied to the big NBA trade with Luka and AD. I mean, you name it, we've got it. And that's what I think makes the game so much fun, is that you might not have one of the two sides, but there's going to be guests that have 20, 30, 40, 50 different proposition wagers on the game, and you hear somebody erupt, and you're like, what the heck just happened? And you realize that A.J. Brown just went over 5.5 receptions. And that's what makes it exciting, and it's such a big part of the game. Really, it started when the Bears in '86, when the Fridge had scored a touchdown in that Super Bowl, and we had to prop up, would he score or not? And although it was a loser for the industry and long faces on our side of the counter, little did we know that it would propel prop betting to where it is today. So when you hear people reference props and walking around with the prop package, it really is the game within the game, and there's so many different ways to bet the game. It's not only over the counter with this package is on the app. So if you get signed up for STN Sports, you have everything on the app that you could dream of to make this an unbelievable experience on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, and I think the big thing with the props is to talk about the payouts. The game is minus 110 each way. You put $110 to win 100, you get $210 back. With the props, there's a lot of different ways to bet small dollars to win big money, where you have things that are 20-1, 30-1, 50-1. Interesting things in a game like overtime, getting paid 7-1. That'll be in overtime.
So wait a minute.
Will there be
we
a
don't
safety
want
in the game?
overtime. We don't want safety. We don't want a 2-point conversion. Those are all things that, because of the price, like Jason said, is such a great payout for you guys.
But there's a lot of those out there. A lot of 20, 30, 40-1 things that you can make some big money on with small bets.
Is there a few things that start at 180 to 200-1 and then go up? And that's...
Yeah, we added for the guests that are interested in not only picking the winner of the big game, but also picking the winner of March Madness, the tournament in March, picking the winner of the NBA championship, and picking the winner of the NHL championship. We've got about a...
So if I like the Celtics, and I like Auburn, and I like the Edmonton Oilers, and I like the Chiefs, I can get a pretty good payout, right?
Yeah. I mean, anything from 180-1 to over 600, 700-1 on picking the next kind of 4 winners. You can do it on the app. You can build those props, and we've got about 100 options over the counter for you to pick as well.
The cool thing with that is
a lot of fun there.
But it's a very small investment you can make to have a really good payout.
And you've got action continuing not only from the big game this weekend, but March Madness and June with the 2 Stanley Cup and NBA playoffs as well.
I think with this game, what's interesting too is that when it comes to a Super Bowl, you always talk about, who's going to be the MVP. And I think, if had the Eagles won 2 years ago, Hurts would have been the MVP, ended up being Patrick Mahomes. And is there a path for somebody else to win? I know kiddingly I say, if the score ends up 9-6 or 12-6, one of the two teams that Elliott or Buckner could be the MVP if it's all field goals. But realistically, you don't see that happening. But in the Eagles' case now, although Hurts would have been the MVP 2 years ago had they won with his 3 rushing touchdowns, you have the Barkley dynamic now. So it's a little bit interesting with those two guys against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs.
Yeah, and the shots, as you talk about it, not taking Mahomes, not taking Barkley, not taking Hurts, and the paydays on everybody else are absolutely fantastic. So if you want to put in that pipe dream of somebody has a linebacker has an interception return for a touchdown with a key sack, you can get 70, 80, 100 to 1 on those type of players to win the MVP.
Yeah, I think, and looking at the game itself too, and let's talk a little bit about like kind of line splits, what you see. We've talked about the game kind of hovering around that 1.5 right now. Industry consensus might be 1. But if you like Philadelphia, are you taking the points or are you taking them on the money line to win the game? I think most fans would say, hey, I'm going to take them to win the game. That 1 point I'm not as concerned about. But talk a little bit about the splits that we see out there as well.
Yeah, obviously we talk about the money line and minus $1.25 on the Chiefs and plus 105 on the Eagles. So that's a 20-cent split. You're going to find that you go through a lot of the props. They're 20 to 30 cent splits on the props. And so if you're betting into a place that you're seeing a 35, 40, 50 cent split on the props, that's not something that you want to do. You're not getting good advantageous prop prices. So anywhere between that 20 to a 30 cent split. And when I say if the favorite is minus 140, you want to make sure that on the underdog you're at least getting plus $1.10. If you're seeing a minus 140 with an even money and you've got what we call a 40 cent split, that might be a little bit too much. Make sure you're at least finding a place that's got 30 cents or lower on their splits throughout their Super Bowl props.
And I think when you look at all these props, guys, that one thing is that we're in an information era. There's so many information and stats and things out there. We know conventional wisdom is, hey, in a game like this, these two teams played 38-35 2 years ago. It's over. But really do your homework and look at this stuff because there's so much information out there. I know one of the key things that we kind of talked about beforehand, and you brought up a really good point, it's about when in the Chiefs Super Bowls, what happens when they score first and what happens when they score second?
Well, it's going to go back to, it's going to be one of my props that I want to release out there. But the Chiefs, obviously, we talked about, they've played, this will be their 5th Super Bowl in the last 6 years. And so in 2020, when they beat the San Francisco 49ers 31-20, the Niners scored first in that game, and the Chiefs were able to win. In 2023, when they beat the Philadelphia Eagles 38-35, it was the Eagles that scored first in that game with a 7-0 lead, yet the Chiefs won 38-35. Last year, the San Francisco 49ers jumped out to a 10-0 lead over this Chiefs team, and the Chiefs were able to come back and win 25-22. The one loss for the Chiefs was against Tampa Bay, Tom Brady, Tampa Bay Bucks in 2020-21. They lost 31-9 to Tampa Bay. However, the Chiefs scored first in that Super Bowl. So the Chiefs are 3-1 in Super Bowls that they didn't score first in. So it was one of the props that I was looking at again this year.
But I'm going to throw something out there.
The Chiefs to score first. Or the Eagles to score first and the Chiefs to win. You get about 7-2 on that.
And that's a real interesting stat because if you look at the last 16 Super Bowls, the team that has scored first has won 11 of those Super Bowls. But that's the exact opposite with the Chiefs, who have scored second, yet are 3-1. So you can do the math and see what the difference is for the Chiefs is they prefer to score second, it looks like. There's just so many cool ways to bet the game. I know we touched on the props that are tied to Luka and Anthony Davis, which have been fun. And those are kind of like water cooler chatter a little bit. You get those out there and people start talking about that stuff because what's hot right now, and it's the NBA as the trade deadline comes up. But there are just so many ways to bet the game and so many cool things that are out there right now. Really get on the app or come in and grab a packet and look at all this stuff because you can have so much fun with it.
Yeah, and you keep making reference to the Luka and Anthony Davis prop, one of our cross-sport props that we put out there. And so we put up Luka Doncic, his points that he'll score versus the Chiefs' total points scored in the big game. But it's not in Luka's maybe first start that's this weekend or upcoming. We selected the game that's going to be on February 25th, coincidentally, when the Lakers are playing the Mavericks in LA. So both of these props, whether it's Luka or Anthony Davis, Luka is versus the Chiefs total points, Davis is versus the Eagles total points, but it's the game on February 25th when it's a Mavericks at Lakers matchup.
And it's going to be fun. I mean, we tried to be creative. The bookmaking team did a great job. They did a great job last year with kind of those pop star versus tight end props, and these two really have gotten some media attention and water cooler chat already. They're really a lot of fun. I mean, my favorite props are really the ones that when you look at some key players and you look for value. And I think when you look at the MVP for me too is if the rushing touchdowns are split a little bit, and the Eagles happen to win, and maybe Hurts has one and Barkley has one, but maybe an A.J. Brown or a Devonta Smith has 130 yards receiving and 2 receiving touchdowns, is there a little bit of value there with them? I think when you look at the Chiefs, there's so many different guys that you can factor in. If it's Watson or Worthy or Hop or Juju or Brown, there are so Hunt, Pacheco, there are so many different guys. The Eagles don't have that much. So I think that you have to look at maybe a little bit of value with Goddard, Smith, and Brown if one of those guys was to have just a huge game, and maybe Hurts and Barkley kind of poach each other a little bit as far as rushing goes and rushing touchdowns. I think maybe some value with one of those guys as well.
Yeah, and the one prop that I'll recommend that you have to play is the player to score the first touchdown. There's nothing like, watching the game, starting the game and being able to select that player to score the first touchdown. You get some great odds on some players like you talked about. There's a lot of guys on the Chiefs with some big time odds in that receiver core for the Chiefs. And then if you go to page 26 on the packet, when you're able to come in or you find the packet, we not only went to player to score the first touchdown of the game where you pick the one guy, but we got about 10 props where you can get a player to score the first touchdown of the game and you actually get 2 guys. So the odds are a little bit half-lifed, but again, you're getting to cheer for multiple players potentially score that first touchdown. Some of those props are with 2 Chiefs, some of those props are with 2 Eagles, and some of those props are with 1 Chief and 1 Eagle.
The same game are so much fun.
Something to look for is the player to score the first touchdown. It's the prop that you have to start your prop betting with. Make sure you're getting that player to score the first touchdown is the first prop that you're making a bet on.
And check out all the same game props. I think they're a lot of fun to look at, and really you can kind of gauge on what you think might happen, and maybe there's a little bit of a correlation there if you really look at it. Let's talk a little bit.
Well, same game props. Let's go do a second. Okay. If you're on the app, same game props is part of what's built on the app. So you're going to be able to go into that SGP button and build whatever prop that you might imagine, from yardage to touchdowns to team to win the game, from receptions. There's a ton of stuff that you can build. However, when you're betting with us over the counter, you don't have the ability to bet those same game props. So what we've done is we've actually built 4 pages of kind of pre-built same-game props for you. So you can go in, again, check the packet out. It's pages 17 through 20. Those are 4 pages of pre-built same-game props that, again, have some incredible payouts from, call it 3-1 all the way to probably 20-1 on stuff that's going to occur in the game.
Before we go any further, too, I just want to, again, give a shout-out to the entire bookmaking team here. Without going through and naming each guy, you guys all did a phenomenal job. Guys spent a lot of extra time and really worked hard to put this prop packet together, to be creative and really kind of go through everything. So thanks again, guys, for doing an awesome job. I know it's a fun time of year for all of us, but you guys really put in a lot of time putting these together. So thank you, guys.
And I know one thing you had now, you were talking about value on props. And one of the things that when we were building our props, one of the areas that I think there's potential value in is the Kansas City Chiefs players over their yardage. And give me a brief second here, but let me explain why. When we look at what the prop is for the total yards for both the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs, the Philadelphia Eagles total yards in the game is 359.5, receiving and rushing, that they're going to add up to 359.5. And when you add up the Eagles players from Barkley, Brown, Smith, Hurts, Goddard, it adds up to 340. So it's about 19 yards short with some of the other key guys that they might have in there. And so we're pretty close on Eagles yardage 340 to the 359.5 that they're expected to have. Coincidentally, the Chiefs also yardage for the game is 359.5. But when we add up all the Chiefs players, Kelsey, Worthy, Hunt, Brown, Pacheco, Mahomes, Hodkins, Juju, Gray, Watson, that total only comes to 303.5. So we're about 56 yards off from all those players. And you ask, what's the reason for that?
Where's that 56 yards coming from?
It's because there's so many different guys, and we don't know which one is going to have that big game. But all of their totals are somewhat low because you don't know what a Hopkins, a Brown, a Juju, a Watson, a Gray. But if they do anything, the likelihood that they're going over their total pretty easily with 1 or 2 receptions is going to happen. So the yardage on the Eagles is pretty solid. I would say the yardage on the Chiefs is a little bit short because there's so many question marks.
Right.
So if you're looking at a value play, that value play might be on Chiefs yardage to go over because we're clearly missing some yards when you add all that stuff up.
Well, we talked about it. I think the Chiefs guys, you have so many different guys, where the Eagles, it's not nearly as many. So you look at those Chiefs and what's that intangible? Who's going to be that guy that maybe shines? One more thing I want to touch on too is tell us a little bit about the station squares.
Oh yeah, so we the more and more popular this is coming up. Everybody plays their squares. You buy a square and you get the random number of. Unfortunately, every time I play squares, I tend to get the random number of a 2 and a 9 or an 8 and a 5.
2 could happen a lot more frequently this year.
I seem to never win squares. My wife does well. My children will do well, but I never have a chance to win the squares. But we're giving you an opportunity to buy the square that you want. So if you want that 7-7, if you want that 0-0 or 3-0, we've got the odds for each one of those squares. And so, if you want the Eagles 7 and the Chiefs 0, you can get 25-1 on that prop, and it's probably going to be worth more than your squares pool would be in general, paying out first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. So we've got the final game result. What's the ending digit? So if the game was 30-20, that's a 0-0 final. If it was a Eagles 23-20, that's an Eagles 3-0 final. So you can find your square, find the one that you want to take a shot at. And again, some of these are 100-1. When you talk about that 8-5 combo, you're getting 100-1 payout on that crazy square. So take a look. That's page 30 of the packet. You'll find the STN squares on the final result of the big game.
Not only that, when you get to the very end of the packet. I know we're talking about this big game between the Eagles and Chiefs, but guess what? Next year's Pro Football Championship is included in this. So you look at the Titans, who have the first pick in the draft, who are the longest odds, the Raiders, the second longest odds. But this is before free agency and the draft. Does one of these two teams end up with Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward or Kirk Cousins, or what ultimately happens? So check out that as well, because think about last year where the Commanders were. Nobody really thought they were going to be a team that was 4 quarters away from going to the Super Bowl. So there is some value there with those as well. Last thing, guys, again, get signed up for STN Sports. If you don't have the app now's the time to get it. We know how busy the weekend's going to be. This is kind of, like, as I said, the winds are starting to pick up a little bit. We're not quite in the eye of the storm yet, but get signed up for STN Sports. And if you do, we have that $50 no-worry wager, and Jay's going to explain what else we're giving away.
Giving away a free charger, so with a minimum $50 deposit, you get this portable charger. It's got the connections to whether you've got an Android or an iPhone. It's got basically 2 chargers that it'll hold for you. So again, whether you're out and about, out at the beach, walking up and down the strip, or at work, you got some extra chargers here. Great little gift for you. And obviously, we want to keep those mobile phones powered up so that you don't go down at a key point in the game during that in-play wagering or whatever else you may do. And so a great gift here. Again, with your new sign up and a minimum $50 deposit, you're going to get that free charger. And Chuck, we've talked about the packet, but do you have a prop that's out there that is your favorite props, and go back and forth here with a couple of favorite props or a recommendation on something they have to play, or as the packet was built, a prop that you would release as something that is a go-to?
I'm leaning a little bit towards the under the Barkley props. Is that I know that's the key, but I think this Chiefs defense, having that extra week off, they're going to make Jalen Hurts try to win with his arm. So I'm leaning towards the under, and maybe wait until sometime over the weekend where all these props get a little bit more inflated. A lot of over money from the public comes in on these Barkley props, and I'm going to lean toward the under.
And when you say Barkley props, you're talking about Barkley rushing,
yeah.
Barkley rushing attempts,
everything involving
Barkley potentially play the under. I'm going to give you the page number, page 12 in our packets. We have a prop. The game will land exactly 3 points. So the final score will be a 3-point decision. And I can get 4-1 that the game's going to land exactly 3 points. And let me tell you why. Because last year, the Chiefs won 25-22. And the year before that, the Chiefs won 38-35. And the year before that, the Rams beat the Bengals 23-20. So 3 straight Super Bowls decided by a field goal, and I get both teams, whether it's the Chiefs win by a field goal or the Eagles win by a field goal. I'll take the exactly 3 points and give me the 4-1. I like that prop.
I like it too, except what do they always say? Things happen in threes. It happened 3 straight years on 3. So can we buck that trend and see it happen 4 straight years? But
I'm going to give you one more, and it's a guy that obviously the Taylor Swift influence. He's the Chiefs superstar. We're talking about Travis Kelce. When I go back and I look at the Eagles in the wild card weekend against the Green Bay Packers, Tucker Kraft, 5 receptions on 5 targets. Eagles didn't cover the tight end for the Packers very well. Against the Rams, Tyler Higbee had 7 catches. Parkinson had 2 catches. The Rams had 9 catches from the tight end on 12 targets. The Commanders, the game script was a little bit different in that they were down and chasing the whole game, but the Commander tight ends had 14 catches for 138 yards. Zach Ertz had 11 catches for 104 yards in that game, struggled again to cover the tight ends. We saw Kelce not have a really good game against the Bills last week. The week before that, against the Texans, he did have that 117-yard game, and he had the big week. It's Super Bowl time. Travis Kelce has consistently played well in the Super Bowls. I can get 4-1, a plus 400 payout for Kelce to have over 100 yards receiving in this game. So give me that one. I'll take Kelce to have the big game. I'll take Kelce to have the Swiftie shown up on the stadium and have her going nuts. Give me 4-1 on Kelce to go over 100 yards.
Speaking of that, I know there's been a lot of people that have asked, what are the odds on if the Chiefs win? Will there be a proposal by a certain tight end to a pop star after the game? Unfortunately, guys, we don't have that one. But as Jay mentioned, there are so many kind of cool props on the game. It really is a prop bet, again, the game within the game. You don't have to love one of the 2 teams. You don't have to love the total. But there are so many ways to have fun with this game. Check out the app. Grab the packet. There'll be color-coded packets all over the room. Everybody's carrying them. Get here early that day. Get here early on the weekend. We'll have plenty of windows open, extended hours. As you can see from kind of the quickness probably in our tone, the sound of our voices, we're excited. I mean, it's a great time for us as much as it is for you guys, and it's a rematch. I mean, Chiefs have a chance to make history. Can the Eagles kind of buck that trend and get a win here? But it's going to be a great weekend. Don't forget STN Sports.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll throw in there is if this is your first time, if you don't bet sports regularly, but you want to take a chance and bet the big game, bet the Super Bowl, please don't be intimidated. Our writers in our properties, they're used to people that are new at betting sports. They're going to take all the time to explain to you what's happening. You've got so many different ways to bet the game, whether it's signing up on the mobile application. You can take your time, scroll through all those props, look at those props. You also, when you walk into our properties, you're going to find Race and Sportsbook kiosks. They're bright pink in the property. Durango has a special color. They're green, depending on what property you go to. But the kiosks are also a great spot. You can go to those kiosks and kind of search at your leisure, no pressure, pump some money into the kiosk and be able to make some bets. And as I said, head to the writers, ask the questions. They're there to help. They're professional writers. That's what they want to do. So don't be intimidated about coming into the sportsbook to make your bets. Don't be scared. That's what we're here for, and we want you to have a great time understanding the bets, and most of all, having a great time when you watch this championship game.
Yep, I couldn't say it better. And again, stay within your means, have some fun, but I'm biased. I know Jay is too. If you're not in New Orleans, there is not a better place to be than one of our race and sports books industry-wide to catch Big Game Sunday. So for Jason, I'm Chucky, for the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends, powered again by STN Sports. Good luck, have fun, and we'll be talking to you guys next week with a little recap of Big Game Sunday.